Hello, welcome to the continuation of week 7 on internship design and for engineering education. So, in this lecture, we will look at the activities that we have to carry out as an education institution to take this concept of internship, right from the initial planning all the way through to execution. Okay, so we will look at structuring our internship program objectives and how do we go about the partner selection for internships, and a few things about the pre-internship preparations and a very important considerations of timelines. So when we get into the definition of the program objectives, right, so we have to be very clear in establishing the overall direction and the expectations. Okay, so when we are talking about the expectations, we have to align with the expectations of both the institution, the curriculum, the regulatory authorities, as well as the expectations of the internship partner. Okay, so from the institution side, we have to ensure that we align with the curriculum outcomes and the program goals. Right. So at the end of the day, why do we even introduce internship programs is to give them that experiential learning. And what aspects constitute this experiential learning comes from our program outcomes, right? Outcomes and the goals. So you have to look at the program outcomes, the generic program outcomes, depending upon whatever program it is, and then definitely we have to look into the program specific outcomes as well, depending upon the disciplines that we are looking at. Because very clearly there will be, if you are talking about a computer science program, then there are specific experiential aspects that we want compared to a civil engineering or a mechanical engineering and so on, right? So which means that we have to get down to the point of specifying the technical and the professional competencies, okay, which are, when we talk about the technical, specifying the technical and the professional competencies, it can work both ways, right? So you can specify them from the institution's perspective, saying that these are all the existing competencies and the skills that the potential interns will have, and also you should try to outline at the end of this particular internship what are the new additional competencies that they are expected to learn, right? We are, after all, sending the students to internship programs not just for providing some kind of a service to the industry, but also at the end of the day we want the students also to pick up some new things. So why this is an advantage to specify it up front is later on when we talk about selecting the internship partner, this can also be placed in front of them to say that yes, these are the competencies with which the students are going to come in to your organization, but at the same time please provide them with opportunities that will help them hone these additional skills that we believe as an institution will be necessary from a program outcome perspective. Okay. And of course, when we talk about the setting up the direction and expectations, we have to set realistic expectations for the given duration and the scope, right? Yes, while it is great that we want the students to gain as much as possible, we have to be realistic given the duration of the internship on how much can be achieved. And this is where I would like you to recall our previous lecture. There are different durations of internship, different types of internships that we can have, right? We can have short duration internships of say 2 months, which is typically executed in the summer, versus a full semester internship, which is done during the program, or there could be parallel internships also, which is done along with the coursework. So you have to ensure that all of these three are aligned with each other in terms of the expectations and what is it that we want the interns to pick up during the time in terms of the scope. Okay. We also, it will be useful to specify, to identify measurable learning indicators. So This can be a little bit of a challenge, especially when you are having an internship which is executed, which is outside of the institution in a company or in a startup or wherever. So when the measurement, that we could be doing is just an enumeration of what skills that they have picked up or what competencies that they have picked up, right? So we have to remember that typically, internship assessments are qualitative in nature. Converting them into marks and percentages and grades may or may not be practical. So where it is practical, of course, we can indicate measurable quantitative indicators, but the measurable learning indicators most often for internships is likely to be qualitative in nature. So, but having said that, whether it is qualitative or quantitative, it is good to list them upfront. Of course, it all boils down to, to what extent does the internship outcomes, right, connect to our degree requirements, right, and the learning goals. This is where I said, right, the bottom line is to ensure that the alignment with our program outcomes and program specific outcomes and whatever experiential learning that we want to give, we just have to make sure that at the end of the day, that is our final objective. Needless to say, the internship partner plays a very critical role, right? So if there is no internship partner, then there is no internship program. So we have to, that is a, kind of a long drawn process. So this is not something that all of a sudden one fine day we will decide that, okay, we will do the internship program and then you start hunting for, internship partners. It's not going to work that way. So this is a long drawn process. Probably there has to be a committee or a division within the organization, within the institution, which will deal with this. From experience, we have found that the internship is very closely tied with the placement as well. So the placement committee or the placement division of the educational institution should be the right place to identify partners, internship partners, because most of the times the organizations, the industry, which companies which come for placement are the ones which will also be interested in taking interns as well. That is why it is useful to co-locate internship and placement activities next to each other. So when we are identifying partners, we are talking about alignment, not just for internship and for which will also be identical for placement as well, right? So, but more importantly, for the internship, the alignment is even more important because they are still our students, right? So when they are carrying out the internship activity, they are still our students. They have still not graduated. So as an education institution, it is our responsibility to ensure that the students achieve all the outcomes that we expect of them. So which is where internship partner alignment can slightly vary from the alignment that is required for placement purpose. So I will focus here mainly on the internship partner alignment, right? So which means that the alignment can be looked at it from three different aspects. One is the domain itself. Okay, when we are seeking partners, we have to figure out what are the domains for which will be aligned to the own department's domains for the internship, right? So when we, for example, when we are looking at say computer science and engineering as the department, so within the computer science and in engineering, when we are looking at the domain, you can look at it from technology domains. So when you are looking at technology domains, are we looking at say full stack development domain, or are we looking at AI or a data science kind of a domain? Are we looking at theoretical computer science domain? So there could be multiple dimensions, aspects associated with the alignment. Along similar lines, for every department, be it mechanical engineering, right? So within the mechanical engineering, so we could be looking at automotive as the domain, or we could be looking at industrial automation as another domain. So there could be many different domains that we could be looking at. It is always good to have a nice diverse portfolio of partners across multiple domains. So I'm not saying that every department should choose one domain and then look for partners. We should always look for partners who are across a diverse set of domains, because the unification of all those domains is what constitutes a discipline, right? So the broader the set of domains, the better. So that is the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it is on the duration, right? So we have to align with the partners on the duration, right? So going back to the different durations of internships that your institution offers, we have to be very clear that we have, say, summer internships, we have end program internships, for example. If these are the two options that are available, we have to be upfront with the partner and then say that what is it that you would be interested in, right? Obviously, we want them to be to support us both in the summer internships as well as the final semester internship, but we have to be upfront with them and then tell them what is it that they would be interested in. Again, it is very much possible that they will be interested in both types of internships, but they should know, right? And so that is the duration, ensuring alignment with the duration. And the third alignment that is needed is in terms of the skills and competencies. Once again, as I mentioned previously, it has to be two-way, right? You have to be upfront on what kind of skills and competencies that our students will carry when they are coming for that internship. At the same time, it is fair to even expect, saying that at the end of this particular internship, what is the extent of skills and competencies that the organization is able to provide to our learners? Because it should not happen such that we just send them our we have certain expectations, right? So, for example, there is something called DevOps skills in software engineering, right? So that is not something that as an institution we will be able to provide. If we want to give real DevOps skills, right? So we need an environment where production level deployment happens, and that typically happens only in the industry. So only if you tell the industry, tell the company that, we are also expecting that students will pick up these DevOps skills, they may not know that they need to be deployed in which kind of projects. So it is good to state. Of course, we cannot demand from the companies that they must provide these competencies and skills at the end of this internship. We can say that these are the desirable skills and competencies as per our curricular framework. It will be nice if you provide them that kind of an exposure. So this is from an institution, we have to say what is it that we have, and from the industry partner, we have to say what are the desirable things, right? And also, so when we talk about the dimensions, we talk about the capability, commitment, and the culture. Some amount of alignment there also will be helpful in choosing the right partner, right? In terms of the capabilities of the organization also we have to see, right? So are they, do they have enough in-house activity that is going on to be able to provide meaningful projects? Because at the end of the day, we talk about giving the students a real world exposure, which means a real world exposure can come only when they work on real world projects. What is the definition of real world projects? Real world projects from an industry point of view are those projects which they are executing for real clients who are outside of the organization. And ideally there should be a business interest for the company. So that is where the true real world comes into the picture. That is where the true real world challenges are there, right? So if the company might be having very hard deadlines. So how do the students learn to cope with tight deadlines, being very high quality, right? So these are all the characteristics that comes from only from real world projects. And so this is where I would like to caution that we should avoid uh, having partners who are out there to provide in-house projects, right? So which is not really reflective of the real world challenges, but that is something to be avoided or minimized to the extent possible. Okay, I'm not completely saying that we don't have to do that, but there could be challenges in providing true, especially the end semester internships, right? So if there could be challenges in placing the students in internships which are dealing with 100% real world projects for commercial implementations and so on. So it is possible that there are organizations which will take which will provide the necessary exposure to industry level tools, okay, but they may not really be real world projects. Okay, that is possibly in terms of the list of preferences that should come last, because that also leads to the technical depth and relevance that we are looking for. Okay, as an institution we do look for certain amount of technical depth. So what I'm trying to say is that there could be internship partners who are in a position to provide the necessary technical depth, okay, and relevant projects, but it may not be quote unquote meaningful to the extent that it may not be for a real client, it may not be for the in terms of the it may not provide the live live experience, right, of working on live projects. That's another term we often use. Okay, so we have to keep an eye on that particular dimension of the capabilities. Okay, and in terms of the commitment, we have to hope that the industry, the company is able to provide some kind of dedicated mentoring resources for our students, right? At the end of the day, we are sending, as an education institution, we are sending our students to that particular organization. So it should not be such that, okay, fine, we have found a company, we have dumped our students there and then forget about it, right? So we have to take care that our students are also taken care of, right? So which means that there should be some kind of mentoring resources available. I'm not even talking about some human beings being assigned to our students, but in very mature organizations, they will have lots of online learning platforms within the organization, which is made available to the interns. So even the presence of that is also very valuable. Okay, and of course named mentors will be there with certain amount of time allocation that is given for discussing, meeting with them. And if that is there, well and good, but these days we are talking about asynchronous learning. So many organizations, even if they are able to provide a very structured learning experience, that also will be good enough. Finally, the culture also matters, right? When I say culture, it will be good to know why is a partner interested in taking interns. Okay, because from their point of view, obviously, as an institution, we have 100% interest in sending our learners as interns to the organization. But from the organization point of view, also, right, there has to be some level of philosophical alignment to saying that yes, it is important to provide this particular real world experience to the students, which means that if that mindset is there, then it will also give them some amount of acceptance, saying that okay, if the students may not be 100% ready, but it is my responsibility to support them and to elevate their competencies and skills. So that that kind of cultural support alignment should be there from a partner's point of view, and so they should be in a position to orient their whole activities primarily with the objective of learning for the students. Okay, so let me also contrast it, right? So the things that are not desirable is for a company to look at them as as ready-made resources. That is where many times there is a confusion between placement and internship, right? We have to hope and we have to convey to the partners that yes, they are still students, they are still learning. So you cannot have the same kind of level of expectation that you would have from a student who is graduating versus somebody who is there in the internship, right? So that is something that we should drive home the point, and that's where I am saying that we should have a dialogue. Okay, so don't make it into a completely email driven process wherein you send out and then say that okay, these students are available for internship, do you want to take, right? So that cannot be the case. So of course initial level of discussions can happen, but finalizing the partners, it is important from both sides to have a dialogue and make sure that there is this alignment between on the domain, duration, skills and competencies, and in terms of what to look for, right? The dialogue becomes a key. In terms of now once we have identified the partners and we are happy with the alignment and so on, so what are the pre-internship preparation that we have to do? We have to conduct student orientation on expectations and responsibilities before they even start the internship. Okay, because at the end of the day, please remember, they are not going there for final placement, right? So they are going to come back, and they are also going to be ambassadors of the institution. Okay, so which means that we have to conduct some kind of an orientation program before this internship kicks off. Okay, we just talked about the skills and competencies. So whenever it can be partner specific, it can be generic as well. In fact, I would recommend that there should be both these components, right? If there is some very critical partner, a large organization is coming and taking say 20-30 interns from your institution, then it may be important to conduct a partner specific orientation as well in addition to generic. In fact, even if you invite somebody from the organization to come to your institution, if they are taking 30 students, obviously you call them and you invite them, and then for these 30 people, let them provide pre-internship orientation about their own organization's culture, how is it going to be, right? How many days they may have to come and so on, right? If they send, well and good. Otherwise, from the institution itself, somebody who is having some kind of a partnership, you try to understand about that particular organization, that particular culture, and you orient them as an institution. You provide the pre-internship orientation. But in general, even if it's not partner specific, we have to tell them. We have to tell them that you are stepping out of your institution. You are representing the institution, how they should conduct themselves, right? And because at the end of the day, we want our partners to say that, oh, interns from this institution are great, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody forgets the names of the individuals. It's the name of the institution that sticks, right? So that is why we want our interns to be properly oriented. Okay. Then, of course, the second bullet about the briefing the mentors on the learning outcomes and the evaluation criteria is more for the partners. I'm sure they will take care of that, wherein the institution may not have anything to important role to play. But the previous stage that we talked about, right, when we talked about the alignment, so that is where that will serve as an input for the mentorship mentors briefing. The institution will not be doing. I just mentioned it here to show the continuity of what we did in the previous alignment slide. Okay. So we have to also establish some kind of a communication protocols and reporting schedules. Okay, so because we have to set the expectation here on the internship partners, saying that how frequently they have to keep the institution posted. Once again, we may not be able to dictate; it will be determined, but we have to understand as an institution how frequently they will tell us. It is very much possible that they may say that we will only give you a specific internship report. The students will submit an internship report, and as an organization they'll simply say they are satisfied or not satisfied, which is perfectly fine. We cannot dictate those terms, but we need to know. Okay, we have and setting the clear deliverables and project scope. This is once again predominantly for the industry partners, but we as an institution also need some visibility. Okay, once again, as I said, we have to remember that they are somebody who has to come back into the institution. Why that aspect is important from an institution point of view is that every institution will have some kind of a quality check to ensure that the internship outcomes have been achieved. So it is that is something that is typically to be presented. There could be different names. There could be the board of studies, or there could be an academic council. There could be a senate, right? So these bodies will require some kind of a comfort and confirmation that we sent our students to that particular organization. We achieve the outcomes, desired outcomes of this particular internship program? Because we did go through, how do you even structure the program, right? So we need some data, some inputs. So it is possible that we simply accept a report of internship from the student. Okay, and sometimes even that may be challenged because of intellectual property concerns and so on. They may not allow the student to write down in detail how much of it, how much of the internship work has been done and what exactly has been done. That which is okay, right? If they are able to tell us that, okay, so broadly the students have worked on this particular internship and the work has been satisfactory. At the very least, that should be coming out. Okay, the project scope itself may be internal to the organization. They may or may not share the details with us. Ideally, we should convince the partner to be able to share, but if they are not willing to share, at least a minimal amount of details is something we should get from the partner. Okay, so in terms of the preparation checklist, some kind of a student handbook with the role expectations would be useful, and that is something we can go over during the pre-internship period. Some kind of a mentor briefing document with the competency frameworks. This serves as an input from the institution. So when we are sending our interns, we can have some kind of a briefing document that the mentors can use to know the kind of students that they are getting as interns, and some kind of a shared charter and the success criteria and communication schedule as agreed upon in advance. Okay, so these you can also add your institution specific checklist to this, but then remember, all of this is pre-internship, right? Anything that we do before the actual activity starts from a planning point of view is always beneficial and avoids last minute scrambling and surprises. Next, I want to spend some time talking about the timeline considerations. Okay, now this is a dedicated discussion that I want to do on the timelines, because from a practical point of view, institutions most often face lots of challenges on this one. Okay, to begin with, what is the start date? Okay, because when we are preparing our academic calendar, when do you what is who controls the start date, right? If it is a normal semester calendar, right, the institution is fully having the control on when do we start the date, when do we conduct the exams, when do we end the semester, when do we do the grading, right? So the entire calendar is in our control. But when it comes to the internships, we don't have too much say in the dates, specific dates, right? So we may say that yes, we are having summer internships and they have to do internship for, say, I don't know, 40 days, 30 days, 35 days, whatever it is. And then you say that the final semester internship, right? So how many days? It's 150 days and so on, right? Typically, for one thing, in our curriculum, we are okay to put those dates in the mind. So we will assume that as part of our curriculum document, we have specified how many days of internships that the student should do as part of the curriculum itself, because this is a committed experiential learning. But the curriculum can only stop there. We cannot get into the calendar part of it, because the calendar for internship is decided by the place, by the organization where the internship is being done. Okay, so when it comes to the start date, the institutions have to be flexible. Okay, so we need to be flexible. We cannot say that, okay, if it is the final semester internship, it must start on January 1st, it must end on April 30th. We cannot say that. So we have to ensure that there is sufficient flexibility that is provided. The flexibility can range from a few weeks to possibly a month, right? Typically, hopefully, it will not run into several months. Okay, that is where the duration aspect also comes into the picture. So the curriculum may fix the duration. So how do you deal with the start date? So when required, sometimes what may happen is that you assume that let us talk about the final semester internship, right? Suppose the institution says that they need to have say 6. When I say 6 months, so Jan to June is what we expect. So Jan to June, the total calendar days will be, say, 180 days, 30 multiplied by 6. 180 calendar days is what we are expecting. Okay, it may so happen and that at the end of those 160 days, immediately we have a graduation, we have our board of studies meeting. Now we have to report completeness. So what do? There are two places where some constraints may be placed upon us. The company may say that, okay, we may not be able to provide 180 days of internship. We will provide only 150 days of internship. We provide 120 days of internship, right? So we cannot dictate that. Then what do? Because from a curriculum point of view, do we let go of that internship opportunity, or is there something else that we can do? Okay, what we can do is that we have to make sure that we provide some additional augmented work to the students. Okay, we can give some internal projects under some faculty member to compensate for the shortage of the internship duration that is there. Okay, I understand that this is something that may or may not be possible, but I will give you some suggestions on how it can be made possible. For example, if you are, say, a deemed university, then this is definitely possible with appropriate approvals from the academic council or the Senate. Okay. On the other hand, if it is part of another university system, then this level of flexibility can be brought in through your board of studies. Okay, place it as part of the board of studies. You say that this particular internship, they are able to provide 120 days, but then we have a plan to compensate. If it is if the curriculum requires 150 days, then for the remaining 30 days, we will assign a faculty mentor who will do some projects which is hopefully aligned with the eventual internship that happens. For example, in the software engineering, if somebody is going to take up a software development internship as part of the final semester, then we can assign a faculty mentor who will do a small DevOps project internally. Okay, so to learn some new skills. So that is something that can always be done before they go there. So the institution needs to provide that kind of a flexibility, because on paper we don't want to compromise, which we say that for that 1 month work, the faculty mentor will provide a certification that yes, in this 1 month period, this is what the student did as a mini project or whatever. And then the remaining 120 days of internship certificate will come from the company. Okay, so that is something that we have to keep in mind. We cannot compromise, right? So when the curriculum says that that is what is needed, we cannot compromise, but we have to be flexible enough to account for that total duration that is expected using multiple chunks and multiple options. Okay, in the very worst case, it might even end up being allowing the student to do 2 internships in the worst case. When it comes to the end date as well, as an institution, we cannot specify any deadlines to the organization. So we need to have things like soft versus hard end dates. Okay. So what do I mean by soft end dates? Soft end date is something which is a requirement for the institution. Okay. So let me take an example. Somebody gets a 6-month internship. Okay. But the start date got pushed to the month of February. And our typical academic calendar says that from Jan to June is where the internship needs to be done, right? So when you are saying from Jan to June is when the internship is to be done, because in July is the graduation. So, but then the companies started the internship in the month of February, and which means that the actual calendar internship will end in the month of July. So as an institution, we cannot say that the student will not graduate until July. Okay. So what we could be doing is that we will take a soft deadline of June 30th, and we will give the student a 1-month pre-internship work within the institution. But when it comes to June 30th, we will accept some kind of an intermediate interim completion status from the organization, saying that, okay, that their work in those 4 months or 5 months is satisfactory. So then we will go to the competent authority within the institution. It could be the Board of Studies or the Senate, and then say that, okay, the student will continue to get paid, continue to do the work, but then as far as the internal deadlines are concerned, by June 30th, this particular student has successfully met the internship requirement, and then you can proceed towards the graduation requirements, right? So these are all the mechanisms and processes that the institution has to put in place so that at the end of the day, the student does not suffer. And our own administrative activities also do not suffer, because we could be partnering with, say, 10 organizations. It is impossible to align the end dates with all the 10 organizations. So, and then if you keep taking the maximum time for all the 10 organizations, there is no fixed deadline for the institution's graduation activities, right? And then issuance of the certificates, then there will be a big ripple effect which will spill over endlessly. Okay. And the effect of that spillover we have already seen during the COVID period, but we have successfully overcome that particular thing. So we need to get into much more predictable timelines here. So we have to create whatever mechanisms, whatever I have mentioned here in these slides are suggestions, but there could be variations that are discussed internally within the academic council, within the Board of Studies, and come up with a much more deterministic internship timelines. That is essentially what I wanted to convey here. So, in summary, proper planning and structuring is extremely important to avoid surprises, right? We don't want to be caught on 30th of the June suddenly with a list of students who still have internships going on in the company. What do? Do we postpone the graduation ceremony? Of course not, right? So if you plan it upfront, then you have the dialogue, right? Having dialogue and with the companies and the internship partners is also important. Be transparent with the expectations of curriculum and other aspects. Okay, and that is where identifying partners with good alignment with the institution will be very flexible, right? On 30th of the June, if you are asking them, requesting them, can you please send us a one-liner saying that the student's work has been satisfactory so far, right? So that is very nice for us to move forward in a confident way. Okay, so we need to create whatever it takes to give that flexibility within our calendar, within our curriculum, in order to have a friction-free internship activities for our students. So on that note, we will kind of conclude this particular lecture on how do we structure it from the planning all the way to the end. So we need to look at it from an end-to-end point of view, and that is essentially the objective of this particular lecture.